All right. Thank you, Penny. God does give us everything we need and more. Good morning. Good morning. It is so great to see all of you. I see people I've never seen before. I see people I haven't seen in a long time. We've got a Hawaiian section over here. We've got the British section over here. We are integrated. This is fantastic. How is everybody? Happy Sunday. So our topic this morning is spiritual integration. And I want to start by making a blanket statement that you've heard me say many, many times before, and you've heard it in other places, not just here. But it's true. The spiritual life is not a theory. We actually have to live it. We have to take what we learn and move it out of our heads in order to benefit from it. In general, we tend to think of our spirituality as comprising two realms, either theory and practice or theory and application. But I would posit that practice and application are two discrete categories unto themselves. So we are going to look at our spirituality on three levels this morning: theory, practice, and application, because really, practice and application are not the same thing. How many of you are new to the conscious spiritual journey? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you have been doing this for a very long time? And how many are somewhere in between? Okay, but we're all there, right? We're all moving along this continuum, and no matter where we happen to find ourselves in the moment, our deliberate focus on the spiritual journey entails three basic areas. The first of those is philosophical. It's intellectual. I like to call it intellectual acquisition. It includes reading, study, attending lectures, attending classes, participating in workshops, whatever we do to acquire knowledge, to learn. This is the learning phase. How many of you are currently engaged in some kind of learning? Pretty much everybody. This is really good news. The second area is spiritual practice. This could include prayer, meditation, yoga, chanting, journaling, gratitude list, walking on hot coals, right? It's whatever we do to move into sacred space and into mindfulness. How many of you are involved in some kind of regular spiritual practice? Raise your hands. Again, pretty much everybody. This is good. Gym gardening counts, by the way, as a spiritual practice, so you can raise your hand. Okay. Our third area is application. See, for most of us, life does not happen solely within the confines of mental stimulation or physical practice. We're all a guru in our own lives, but we're not necessarily gurus to the world, so we don't have the privilege of sitting around meditating all day, do we? Life is what happens all the rest of the time. Life is what happens when we are not in a Sunday talk, when we're not walking on hot coals. So it is crucial that we garner spiritual knowledge, and it's essential that we engage in practice so we can center ourselves and think about what we know. But what about the rest of it? What about when we are at work and it's the busiest day of the month? Or we're nursing a sick child? Or our finances are an absolute disaster? What about then? Most of us tend to respond to these kinds of stressful situations by bringing our spirituality to the condition, right? We say, oh, yeah, I remember, I can do this. But what about just during normal times, when it's just a regular day at work, and the children are well, and the money is flowing? What do we do then? So my central question this morning is this: how do we seamlessly incorporate the three areas of our spirituality? The intellectual knowing, the deliberate practice, and the actual application. Well, the answer is spiritual integration. It's about integrating these areas. So we are going to examine spiritual integration in terms of the what, when, where, who, and why. All the W's, we're going to cover those. So let's get started. You ready? First, let's define it. What is spiritual integration? I like to think of it as the living of our lives in such a way as to recognize, embody, act upon, and thereby benefit from our learning and our practice. It's actively living a principle-centered life. How many of you are here for the first time? And how many of you are still relatively new? Okay, so just a few of you are still relatively new. I don't agree with everyone who raised their hand, but that's okay. There is no time in the mind of God. So let me define principle for everyone so that we're working with the same definition. In the Science of Mind glossary, principle is defined as the source or cause from which a thing comes, a truth which is unchangeable. So for our purposes, principle is simply the idea that God is all there is. We recognize God and nothing else. So everything in existence is made from this substance, this one source, this all in all. I'm God, you're God. Everywhere we look, there's God. Everyone we see is part of God. God is all there is. This is principle, plain, basic, simple principle. We also believe that because God is all there is, and because it is a power for good, and because we are created from it, we have access to it. It is always available to us to use. And it is the power that we actually rely on to create our reality. And we can do this consciously or unconsciously. But spiritual integration is actively living a principle-centered life. It is the elegant transition, if you will, from theory to practice to application, wherein our every action is divinely inspired and divinely executed. It all happens in a God way. I know what some of you are thinking. It's impossible not to be spiritually integrated because God is all there is and we are one with God and we are part of God. Well, you're absolutely right. I can't dispute that. But what I'm talking about here is being conscious, mindful, and deliberate in our approach to what we know. We're already spiritual. We're already integrated. There is nothing else we could possibly be. But the key is consciously assimilating into our daily affairs with purpose what we know and what we take time out to practice. It's about living it seamlessly, moment to moment, and enjoying the benefit of that. We don't have to establish a connection with God. That's already taken care of. That's our birthright. It's already there. But we have to recognize it and live from it. Recognize it and live from it. It's not enough to know it. And it's not enough to take an hour a day to articulate it for ourselves or bring it in somehow. This is about living it all the time and allowing it to inform our every action. So no matter what we do, no matter where we are God in expression. Even when we're asleep at the wheel, literally or figuratively, we're expressing the one Spirit. But imagine for a moment what life would be like if we consistently acknowledged and exercised spiritual integration while we're awake and consciously aware. Yeah? What would that be like? So that takes care of the what. Let's move on to the when. The word when itself brings up not the greatest memories for me of childhood on road trips. When are we going to be there? Are we there yet? Yeah, are we there yet? Now, my parents were researching Buddhism and reading Ram Dass. Why couldn't they have said, "You're here now"?